So we had the Virtual Alexandrian Soirée. Would you ever think that this could happen?
Never thought that this could happen at all. An advantage of technology. Technology is both fantastic and detrimental. And I think in this case, for our soiree, what was so fantastic was being able to speak to individuals across the globe, which truly is unprecedented decades ago. So it was amazing to be able to speak to elders and seekers from Portugal and Australia and the United States. So in that way, it was pretty powerful and incredible to get that group of people together.
We have a lot of mediums that could reach a lot of people and that we could get together very easily, but we actually misuse them, I think. We had a couple of rules for this particular virtual Alexandrian soiree. For those who do not know what the Alexandrian soiree is, it's a gathering of initiates and seekers, where seekers will ask questions to the initiates. It's not a social gathering. It's a different thing because it is actually a session of question and answers. That's basically what it is, and an opportunity for the seeker to ask those questions and have answers. And we always ask them to come prepared with questions, and they did.
There were
Yeah.
really great, insightful questions, and some questions really difficult to answer as well,
Yes.
which is great.
Yeah. We wanted it to be at the level of the magical and not the mundane. So which is it's a difficult thing sometimes for the Zoom to get up to that level. But I guess that, I suppose that it's up to the people involved to bring it up to that level. And we did. I think that everyone was absolutely brilliant in terms of answers and also questions. And I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, I did. I did as well, and I also are absolutely the guardrails certainly helped the flow of conversation, and as well as letting others to join in the conversation in terms of answering questions.
Yeah.
So there were no dominant voices, which I thought was really successful as well.
Very difficult when we have a lot of initiates in the same room, because we have people that have different backgrounds, coming from different practices and different experiences. And sometimes because they want to be, it's not about ego, but it's about, wanting to be heard. And it's difficult sometimes to get that managed. And I think that we accomplished it very well. So this is a virtual Alexandrian soiree. It's going to happen not very often, actually, very seldomly. And it's going to be an event that is an online event that will, have, it's an opportunity. I mean, we have, I think it was 2 hours.
About 2 hours, yep. And we
About,
stuck to that as well. So again, it's great to have those kind of parameters in place.
yes, so no more than 2 hours, and that's that. We invited people to. It's by registration only, not by invitation only. It's by registration only. Anyone can come, initiates or seekers, but they need to register. So we do publicize it, everywhere. And then people can just register. They just send an email and say, I would like to participate, and that's that. If you don't really, then we know that you do not want to be there, which is good.
And what's interesting too is that this use of technology also raised a question because we were speaking to people from across the globe. It also raised the question is, can this technology be used in training, which I thought was a really interesting question. Should we be using these types of technologies in actually training of initiates? What do you think about that, Karen?
I remember that question actually, and it was one that came from the necessity of, sometimes people are far away, and they, I have a track record actually of training people or trying to educate and training people that live very far away. So I devised a system that I could apply so that they could actually have the training that was consistent, good training, and how can you accomplish this with no nonsense? No nonsense. They come in for training. That's it. There's no conversations about the life and the meaning of life and all those
Exactly.
meaningless conversations. So
No.
you get a compact, 5-hour nonstop of training, and then you accomplish the same as you would in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
With all of those, endless hours of conversations with wine in your hand, which are absolutely fantastic if you have the luxury of time. But if you don't, then that's how it's going to be, because we're here for a purpose, and the purpose is to train you. And if you are coming for training, that's training you will have. So that's the thing. I had to devise this organization skill to give these initiates that lived very far away up to scale to as you would if the person was living in the same city than you, so that they could have and bring the training to their own cities and countries. And one of the compliments with this particular one of the things that were one of the techniques used were actually virtual conversations, not training, because I don't think that it's possible to train people over Zoom.
That was my question. Yeah.
That's right.
That
After
was my
5 hours, I responded.
whether or not training could actually be done over Zoom.
No, I don't think so. I think that it can add to the training sessions, virtual sessions that people could have, and that can be done. But they're not training sessions; they're just discussions. And I think that they're absolutely brilliant, because you would do that with in the old days, you would do that over the phone with endless fortunes to be paid to the telephone companies, because there were hours and hours and hours on the phone, because you wanted to ask things and you wanted to ask questions. And so that, I think that's a very good complementary, thing to have to add to the training. But I think that the training still, and this is, I think, the opinion of all of the elders present as well, was that training is not done virtually, can't be done virtually. There is a complement thing that can happen, virtually, but that's just an add to it, and not really just that.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think the soiree, because this is really I think the first of its kind to have a virtual soiree. And because it's question and answer, because it's sort of this conversation was very, very successful, and can absolutely be done to great aplomb. But then in terms of actual training, well, no, right? One will have to physically travel to that destination. And as you said, right, it could be, for 5 to 10 hours of training over a weekend. And then they go back to their place of residence, and then have to come back out. And of course, supplemented absolutely with question and answer over the telephone or virtually. But training is a different thing.
Yeah, training is, it's physical. It's you need to be there. And then, of course, it entails a couple of other things, that, you need to understand, and you need to be in presence with people. I was a little bit afraid that this, you're absolutely right. This was the first time that an Alexandrian soiree was done virtually.
Right.
Nobody else had done this before. So for us, it was really, really good to have this opportunity. And then the other thing was that training is really, you need to be physically present. In this case, in terms of the soiree, what you could do in there, you would lose a lot of things doing it virtually. Of course you do, because you're not in presence with people. You're not really engaged in an exchange. We all know that an exchange in person is different from an exchange virtually. So we will
Absolutely.
lose a little bit out of it, but we gain other things. And one of the things that we gained was the extensive reach of this particular Virtual Alexandrian Soirée, which actually reached out to throughout the world. I mean, it was a very good plan to have
Yeah.
that done. So we lost a couple of things, but we gained others that are important as well, which is geographical distance, right? So,
Okay.
and that's it doesn't mean that I'm still doing Alexandrian soirees in person. It's just another one that could eventually be done once in a while, maybe once a year or twice a year, and then we will have people that would come, and enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's great for those persons who are isolated geographically, where it's
Yes.
really difficult to find a coven. And if this really sparks them, and they really deem this as their path, and I think it's for them, it's then that sacrifice to go and find a coven in person. And I also think it also proves or tests their vocation and tests their dedication as well. To then go and seek in the real world after attending something perhaps virtually.
When we have this particular opportunity, we needed to make it the best we could, and the rules, of course, helped that a lot.
Yeah.
The rules were essential to maintain not only the management of speech of each of the people involved, but also the tone. In terms of, the level that this was done is important to be done in a higher level. So it was really good. And we had a couple of questions that were absolutely, there were really good questions from the seekers. One of them was about Black Covens. Remember this?
I do. Yeah, I do remember this one about Black Covens.
Yeah. Black Covens is something that it's mentioned not only in What Witches Do, but also by in Firechild by Maxine. And there's this idea of the Black Coven, which is interesting because the person who asked, they asked, is there any Black Covens in the Alexandrian tradition? Because it was, I think, a misinterpretation of what the statement was in the book. But we do refer to Black Covens, to those covens that actually are dedicated to some type of magic that is not really one that would be in tune with the wheel of evolution of a human being, spiritually speaking. Then there is also other answers to this, which is a couple of like one of the elders said, a bunch of folks that do not give a damn about morals, or they do all of the things that they have to do to ingratiate themselves and for their own pride and glory. And that's one of the definitions. And no, we do refer to Black Covens but beyond ours and beyond what we do in the Alexandrian tradition, which is a work of light, of course. But
yes.
But it's just a way of naming groups that really do work against the wheel of life.
I don't know if you can really answer this, but do you think that there are or have been covens that have been corrupted?
Oh yes,
and then
absolutely,
and then become a Black Coven.
Yes. Well, in the old days, they used to have to identify these covens, but they would be identified, and then they would be a dissemination of the information about that coven and what they would do and all of that. And as a warning, not to be involved either with them or to not collaborate or be with or involvement of any kind with that particular bunch. So this is something that it's well known. And yes, of course there are. Yeah, of course there are. There's corruption everywhere. And we know that there are Black Covens. Of course they are. So, we always have those who are a little bit more, they lose their track, they lose the life, they lose the work, and they just give into, and this is one of the things, you can work things that you need to be working, but you need to know what you're doing. And normally the Black Coven is not really one that really needs or feels the need of redemption or have any morals whatsoever. So their only single purpose is to work towards their own gain and glory. So it's a very selfish way of doing things. There is no greater purpose. There is no thought about what to help people. So it's just, and then there's various types of Black Covens. Black comes in various tones.
Does.
And I think so. So you have really, truly heavy-duty Black Covens, and then you'll have like the blackish, that dabbled occasionally in these practices. And this is, one of the things that really concerns me about this. It's the way that things are done. Most of the time, the leader of the coven will drag all of the members into this downward spiral of Black practices, under the guise probably of justice and trying to fix things and protection or whatever it is, and then they will go, all of them. So this is the sad bit, right? Because to be a leader of a coven is to have the responsibility to lead people in practices that are good for them and that would help them enhance their own spiritual life and evolve. If you are a leader, of course people will trust you, right? So, and they will take your word for it. But we have to remember there are those who will always think for themselves, and there will always those who will refuse to go into this downward spiral. So I think that it's very, very sad that people will get, next thing you know, you have a whole coven that it's involved in this practice just because the person that is in front of it, under the guise of the banner of righteousness and, they're doing this because, they want vengeance or they want whatever. They drag everyone with them.
Yeah.
It's very selfish. So it starts with selfishness, and then it begins to be, and then it feeds in. Once you drank that chalice of self-indulgence, once you drank that chalice, it's very difficult for you to stop doing it. So they continue to do it and over and over again. And it's quite sad, but yes, there is, to answer your question 5 hours after.
No, I love it. This is really good. That's good.
There are, yes, Black Covens. Yeah.
And I'm sure there are initiates who probably very unwittingly that, they don't know the practices of covens before you're actually, joining the group. And if they find themselves in these types of workings and want no part of it, right? So therefore leave the coven. Do you think a whistleblower is an oath breaker? So if you were an initiate, your coven is doing some really nefarious things. Is it okay for that initiate to blow the whistle on this coven? Or would you think that to be a breaking of an oath?
That is a very difficult answer to give. And the reason why it's twofold. This can serve vengeance of the people that, for some reason or another, were wronged, and they want vengeance, so they want to destroy those who wronged them.
Yes.
And this member could be one of them, one of the people that were wronged, and then they want to, for vengeance, want to, not necessarily that the coven is a black coven, but because they want to denigrate the image of the coven. So they will say that the coven is a black coven because they want to retribute the pain that the whatever happened inflicted on them. And that's dangerous because, it's a whistleblower, but it's a fake whistleblower. However, it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is a true person that actually removes themselves from the coven, and they want no part of it. I think that there is no other way. We know that the existence of black covens, so of course it isn't a break of an oath, because you cannot protect people that are harming you or harming others.
Harming others, yeah.
So they already broke the rule. So by saying who they are and where they are, truthfully, it isn't really breaking any oath. It's just a fact. It really is. So of course you're not going to expose the. But if they ask you, if somebody asks you why you left, you're going to lie. You're not going to lie. You have to tell them why you left and what happened. So if you do, and if you want to go into another coven, and if you want to tell them, you need to tell them the truth. And of course, if you tell the truth, then you'll say, well, this and this and this was the practices that they were doing, and I didn't want any part of it. And of course, this is the way that things are known, because then we know that that coven was working that way. However, is as bad as the practices of the coven, of a black coven, if somebody leaves the coven and lies about what the practices were, just because they want to get even to something that happened in the coven. And the coven is really not a black coven, but because you're very hurt, you're going to tell people stories about that coven just to get even. That's actually on you, and it's really not. The coven is not a black coven. You are a black initiate.
Yes.
So,
Exactly.
but this can happen. This can happen. I've seen this happening over and over again, and we need to be very careful. People that listen to these people have to be very careful. They have to actually make sure that they confirm the stories and all of that, because it can happen. I don't think it is. If it is truthful, I don't think it's breaking any oath. No.
I have another question for you, Karagan. This is a mini soiree happening right now. So imagine you have a seeker who is, asking you questions, and they are asking about a, high priest or high priestess that is, I don't know, nearby to them. And then, however, that this person is no good. Like that coven leader, for example, maybe they do dark workings. Maybe they have no real knowledge or training. What do you then say to that seeker? Would you tell that seeker, "Oh, I know that they're legitimate because they have proper lineage," or and then go and speak to them, or would you clue in the seeker in terms of, well, that coven might not be the most, functional, or is it a dysfunctional coven, or that there's black workings? How much would you tell?
I wouldn't lie. I mean, if why wouldn't you warn people about it? If you know for a fact. I mean, you have to be very careful when we say these things, because we have to have proof of it, right? But if you do have proof, yes, of course, why not? I would. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I would say no.
Yeah, it's a difficult, for me, it's difficult, especially, and you never really know unless you've circled with that coven. But if you have, right, so therefore that's the thing too, like if you actually have circled with that group and you have a seeker who's interested in that group and what really goes on there, what do you do? Like, do you say, well, I would be cautious, but
Well,
it's
yeah,
worth a meeting. Or would you be like, well, no, they're properly lineaged, and I would go and speak to that coven, that coven. I never want to manipulate the seeker's will. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right. But this
that
is the
might be
thing.
their destination.
Why is this people asking you about another coven? You know, so if they are talking to you,
Yeah,
then they're talking to you.
yeah,
You need to leave people there to choose. You
yeah. You
can't
do.
really. Uh,
Yeah,
I always go for that thing, which is, if you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say
I'll
anything.
say it. Yeah,
But if it is really harmful, I would warn them.
yeah,
If it is harmful, I mean, we're talking about, sexual abuse, for instance, or something,
yeah,
you know. But so if you are going to say, I won't advise that to go to that group, the person can go. And if they stay in that group, then that's that, you
yeah.
know. Because I really do believe that like attracts like. And people that are in the covens that they are in, they belong there.
Or they
Unless
leave. Yeah, or they.
they it was a mistake.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is a mistake
Hmm.
because there's too much masquerade going on. When you approach a group and there is a masquerade going on, it's very difficult to tell because, it sounds good, it looks
Yeah,
good, but then it doesn't feel good when you're
yeah,
in. So you're already in and it doesn't feel good. Okay, so this was a mistake. And it's fine.
yeah.
You just get out. That's all. Yeah.
And then just to go back to that point of like, why would a seeker be asking you? Do you know what I mean? Well, oftentimes when I speak to a seeker, I also, especially if I'm the first person, right, they're speaking to, I
Yeah.
almost always encourage them to speak to as many leaders of covens as possible. So sometimes that question does come up where they're like, oh, well, I know that there's another one here. Do you know anything about them? So
It's not your position to know what others
no,
are
and
doing.
you can't know, right? You can't
You
know.
can't really because you
Yep,
don't belong to that coven, so you
yep,
don't really have an opinion. You can say that you know the person, that they are valid or not, or
yep,
they have an initiation or not, and that's about it. You can't really vouch for what they do because you don't belong to their coven. If you have been with them in circle, however, then you can say, well, I have the experience to have been with them in the circle, and I quite enjoyed it, and that's all you can say.
yep,
Um, it is the work of the seeker to know and to feel and to assess, not
yep,
yours.
yes.
So if they have to go there and get dirty and then get out of it, then that's how it is. Maybe
Good
they
point.
need that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe they need that. So I think that it's not our job to prevent people to fall.
very interesting.
Good.
Exactly, because we have no idea what their life lesson is. We have no idea.
Yeah.
What they're supposed to, right? What they're
Yeah.
supposed
Yeah.
to learn
Yeah.
in that regard.
And if they need to fall, they will.
Yeah,
Hopefully to learn something out of the fall, but we'll see.
exactly. Not easy being a seeker. I
Not easy. But
not
then
easy.
again, if you are
Not
in
supposed to be.
seeking a spiritual path, and if you are in this quest, you are in the quest of spiritual research,
Mhm.
in order for you to find your place and find who you are and where you want to be. It is required of you to have some type of perception about what is going on with people and around you and people that you're involved with. So we hope that that is also a requirement of the seeker, that it has some kind of probably very simple and very naive, but yet still perception of what is fit to their own vibration or not, or against their own vibration. And this is I don't really feel good about this, or
Yeah,
I do really feel good about this group, and it really, really, really this is what I want to be, this is where I want to be. And that is the resonance that you need to feel and you need to listen to. So it is part of the job of the seeker to have this. So
It is. And seeking is a trial in and of
yes.
itself. It's also interesting how this is how like almost like how magic works, where like you forget, right? Like you have like this intense sort of moment and things are happening, and then all of a sudden you and when you're out of it, like you forget in many ways, like, all right, well, what actually happened then? Who were the attendants? Who was there? It's interesting that somehow how like secrecy ends up playing a part in this with very unconsciously.
We asked in the Virtual Alexandrian Soirée to not be recorded.
Yes, not
people could, but we asked not to.
Yeah,
and the reason why is because we wanted to live in the memory afterwards.
Yeah,
and that was one of the things that we asked. So sometimes, yes, sometimes you know that it is a success when you don't remember everything that was said.
Yeah.
That's how you know that it's a good magical moment.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening right now. We don't remember everything that was
We did have a question. We had the question about like the differences between Alexandrian, Gardnerian, or
oh yes, we did.
So we had those which we have talked about on the podcast. So there are
yes. There was a question about the name, how you get a name in the Alexandrian.
Oh, that was interesting. Yeah, about magical names and
names and how you get them. And of course, that's sacred. We don't talk about it. So we just said to the person, well, I guess that you have to be initiated to find out.
It's one of those things. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah. But it was really good. I mean, all in all, it was a very interesting conversation. It was really, really good. And, you need to, I find very interesting to look at, all of these things in your life when you get these moments that are unique and very special. And, how do you recognize magic in your daily life? Do you stop and say, you know what? I'm going to do magic right now, and I'm sitting here in a coffee shop, and this is a moment that is special, that you can actually take that is happening around you and transform it into a magical, and use it in magic right then and there. Has this happened to you before, or
Absolutely.
not?
Absolutely. It's when worlds, I was going to say when worlds collide, but actually everything is interwoven. There is really no collision in that way. And it can be incredibly mundane, Karagan. So I remember entering into a space where the space was literally vibrating because of a fan or a turbine that was connected to the air system in that room. And we're talking, this is like an office. This is a completely mundane space. But the way that the room was actually physically vibrating was generating power, literally. And I used that in just a magical working right then and there.
Yeah. I think, yes. I was, recently, we went to a concert. There's a lot of concerts here in Portugal, in the city of Tomar. And culturally, it's a very rich place, because every day there is a concert, either being a concert of music or any type show. It could be dance, it could be theater, it could be... But we went to this one, which was a concert of a group called the Cult Dances. And it's a Portuguese group of 4 accordion players. So they play the accordion, which is by itself already a very magical instrument, because it's an instrument like many other, but of air. And it's very similar to the lungs of a human being. And the beginning of the show, it's really just the sound of without any notes, without any sound of music per se, but just the breathing of the instrument. and it was a very rhythmic kind of way of doing it, and it was absolutely fantastic. And then the music comes flowing out of those instruments, which again, it's almost like listening to a human being singing. Opera has the same effect, for instance.
Right.
So the vibrations of the music and the currents of sound that came out of that instrument, and the lights in the stage, the colors, the different colors of light, and it just took over this space, and it was an absolutely unique opportunity to do magic. And we were in the box, those boxes in the theaters, and it was just beautiful. It was really good, but most importantly, very powerful. And we used it right then and there to make magic. So it was to direct that power and to use it. So it was really interesting. I was curious to know if you would have that experience as well.
I think your experience is much more elevated and civilized, I think, than my experiences. So, I'm talking about an office with a turbine. And also there was I was in this is many, many, many years ago, restaurant in Italy, and I went into the restroom. And they had red lights in the restroom, with really kind of cool and funky. And it was a load. And then being in front of the mirror above the sink, and just using the color red.
Yes.
In that moment for magical purposes. And in terms of nature, I don't know how many times have you gone outside and then a wind gust comes, and then you take advantage of that gust of wind. Or what about when you take advantage of a thunderstorm?
That's right. Yes,
as well, right? With the peals of thunder and the lightning. So there's a lot that can be harnessed all the time.
The lesson here is never lose an opportunity to do magic.
No. But then you also have to recognize power.
You have to recognize power.
And a lot of people don't, or a lot of people can't. And that's why some circles are just pageantry, right? Because they're actually not raising powers. You have to kind of understand what power is and what power feels like, and then to be able to see it in the mundane world as well, and wherever you are. I've gone to churches for weddings and for funerals, and as you said, when that organ starts to play, or when everyone is in prayer, a lot of them are generating energy. Why can't you tap into that and use it?
Well, I know of many old Portuguese women in churches doing that kind of magic. They're not really there for the
sermon,
for the mass.
For the mass. Yeah.
No, they're not.